All right, welcome to our next video for for Module 1, and it is for Objective 4. So now we're starting to look at different types of data that we use in GIS. So this particular lecture is looking at the different data types not the different data types, but the vector data type to be specific, and just looking at it, being able to identify it and be able to understand how it kind of comes together to create a map. So way back at the beginning in Objective 1, we talked about vector models and we gave a quick introduction to that. So what a vector model is some sort of features that are on the ground that we can capture, and we capture them all together that are similar to create a feature class. So if we have feature classes, now we have, like, for example, several trees, or we have a bunch of roads, or for example, buildings, and we have a particular format and a particular type of feature that's grouped together to create a feature class. There are three ways that we can store a feature class. So the first one is called a shapefile. And what a shapefile is it takes a feature class and stores it as is. So it's actually the easiest way to access the data, and in terms of keeping just that feature class. So I can actually move my shapefiles around to different projects and work with them in different ways. The second kind is a feature data set, which is taking several feature classes and I store them within a database. So if I can put, for example, I've got my trees and my roads and my buildings, and I'm going to put that together. Let's say that is my living quarters data set, and I would probably put vegetation in one separate one, transportation in another, etc. But just as an example. So I take all these different feature classes that are similar, and I put them together into a data set, a feature data set, which is within a geodatabase. The other format that a feature class can be stored as is a coverage, and that's an old format. So if you do happen to see it around, then it's just a feature class stored in its old format. So once we know how we can access that, so for example, if we have a shapefile is the most common version that we hear about. When we go to create the vector model, there are two basic formats. The first format is known as a topological model, and that is when we have spatial relationships between our features with our X and Y coordinates. So for example, a topological model will have like distances and might have angles in between. It could have coordinate system information, but it is really specific to it's specific to like where it's laid out. There's some rules that go with it as well, but you can think of topological as like something that's really structured and has rules that it follows in order to create relationships and for us to be able to comprehend it. The spaghetti model is the second format, and this one really only has X and Y coordinates. It doesn't have any topological relationship. So you can think of it as a bowl of spaghetti. I take like all these wiggly noodles, I throw them into a bowl. They can cross each other, they can like tie up with each other, they rotate around each other. There's no rule as to how that spaghetti actually gets together in that bowl. So the spaghetti model is just really locations of whatever the feature class that we're looking at is, and it doesn't actually store any kind of formal relationship between the different features. So topological is more structured, spaghetti model is less. So with the vector model, the main vector data formats that we use, kind of going back to that, yes, we use topological or we use spaghetti, so it depends on which one we're trying to use. So we can have coverage, we can have shapefiles, and we can have geodatabases. So those are the three main vector data formats. Again, you're not going to see coverage as much, but shapefile you're going to see a lot, especially in this class. So let's talk about a coverage. Even though it's the older version, it's still around, and you may end up with old GIS data that you have to work with. So we kind of have to always keep this historical information together as we teach this stuff. So a coverage is when we have multiple feature classes, and it kind of keeps all of the data together. So we've got nodes, which are points along the, like, for example, the line, or nodes along the polygon. It can store arcs, so saying that it's not necessarily a straight line, but curved. Polygons, ticks, annotation. There's all kinds of different types of feature classes that we can have. It can have topology, and that just allows us to have that spatial relationship, and it's saved there. So it doesn't have to, it can have the spaghetti, but generally good data quality is going to have topology. There's also many associated files that come with it. There's information information tables that contain the spatial and attribute data. So again, these tables, you can pull them up in like Excel if you needed to, or like as a .dat file, and it'll have all the information of that feature class that's built in. They were really originally created for like the original ArcInfo or the desktop version, and you can still use them, and you can still create them, but they're just really rarely used. The shapefile, on the other hand, it contains one feature class, so only one, like for example trees, and that's all I'm going to have in it. The thing is that it has multiple files, so these multiple files create the shapefile. And each of them have their own purpose, and there's several of them. So when you create a shapefile, you're going to see multiple shapefiles within the folder, but they have to all stay together. Otherwise, you're not going to have a shapefile. You end up with like fractions of data that you have. So the other thing too with a shapefile is it does include simple features with no topology. So let's say, for example, you have several points and they happen to be exactly on top of each other. You can do that. If you have multiple polygons, they can overlap. They can do all kinds of crazy things. So there's no topology. It's just really how the data has been collected and it's put into this format. There's something called a DBF table, and that DBF table has attribute information. It's known as a DBase format. So it is one of the multiple files that you have with a shapefile. And you can create them from ArcView, which is the viewing window. You can create them and use them in all ArcGIS software products. And honestly, shapefiles can be moved over to all different kinds of softwares, such as Envy. You'll see it used we can use it in some other proprietary softwares, such as like a Cyclone. And you can use it in Autodesk. They come across very, very well, and they're very kind of universal when it comes to this type of data. So the geodatabase, so that's the shapefile, which you're going to be using a lot in this class. The geodatabase is also the other one that you're going to have. Now, what is interesting with this is that, here it lists a personal geodatabase as a single file. Now, that's with Microsoft Access, not so much ArcGIS anymore. ArcGIS actually has a mobile geodatabase rather than a file. So you may see that come up in an assignment, but if you're going to create geodatabases, you're going to have an option of file or mobile. So those are the two options that are available now. So the file geodatabase, it also has multiple files. You're going to see a whole list of them, and it's just going to all bunch together. It basically becomes a folder. So when you have a geodatabase, consider it a folder of many files. So with a geodatabase, we can have many feature classes as well. And so just like a feature data set, I can have many feature data sets within my geodatabase. Just depends on how you want to function and keep it organized. It's all about data management. So feature data sets, they group the feature classes. It really honestly makes sense to use feature data sets as much as you can to keep things really organized, because you'll find that as you add in data into a map, you're going to end up with so much data. It's nice when you can just refer to a certain data set. So geodatabases do have the ability to contain topology. It can contain simple features and topological features. There's also validation rules that you can set and create and use to make sure that your data is working as it should. It also has the newest data model, whatever it might be for that project. And then when you go into ArcGIS Pro, as soon as you enter into it and you press like create new map, it creates a new project for you. And it's automatically created. And that new project is that geodatabase. So it kind of defaults to that. It is for data management. So you will use this so much. So with vector models, there's other data formats. So there is the raster version, which gives you grids and geodatabases, georeferenced images and such. It's actually a raster model. A raster falls under raster model, but you can have versions of rasters as a vector model. They're a little bit more confusing that way. Then we also have triangular irregular networks, which are TINs. And there's tables that you can save it as, layer files you'll see, and CAD drawings. So those are the most common versions of data formats of vector models. There's also more out there. So if you're like, oh, I remember seeing this, you've probably seen many other data formats, but these are the ones that are most common and you may see in this class. So if we're in ArcGIS and we're looking at a project, we're going to see something that looks like this. So you can see here that we have folders, and in the folders we have data that's within there. So for example, we have a shapefile that's showing right here, and that's showing that it is a polygon. These little dots, 3 dots here, that's showing as a point, and you can see this SHP at the end that represents a shapefile. And I don't see there's lines right here. So there's a linear version. So you can actually see whether it is a point, line, or area, or polygon, based on the little symbol beside the name. Or you can look at the extension, which will say SHP. But you can always change the name, so don't always trust that. So that's showing like kind of where it's located within. You can see tables. There's an Excel table here. There's a text file here. So we can see that we can bring in data of all different versions. Then we have the file geodatabase. So we can see the GDB ending there. And we can see how there are 3 different feature classes that are within that. So they're not actual data sets at this point, but they're showing feature classes. And you can see the feature class down here as well. So again, so up here, the shapefiles show up as green. The feature classes don't have the green color to them, but you can see what they are by looking at the shape of the icon beside it. And you can have multiple geodatabases in one project because sometimes you do bring in multiple geodatabases, and then you work together to make an analysis of that. So in summary, there are many different data formats that ArcGIS uses. The vector data model in ArcGIS is the most common. And we can also use file geodatabases to store and organize your data. And in this class, it's going to be used a lot. So you can go ahead and read Chapter 5 in Managing Vector Data. There is a link here. If we click it, it's going to bring us to a page. I'm just going to adjust this so it fits the thing here. So you're going to see a page that is going to introduce quick tutorials for you. So you can see here's managed data. You can see some videos here. So they've got some really, really good educational products through Esri. I highly suggest going and checking it out and working through them because that's going to give you the benefit of what ArcGIS really has to offer. And so if you want to keep working on assignment 1, if you haven't done that, you can keep working away at it. And there is your references for today. So I look forward to teaching you more in Objective 5.